Well, got the first one of the morning. That one works. Hey, Clear Lake peeps, welcome back. Sorry I've been gone. Change of pace, fresh new environment, little change of attitude. Plus we got away from a whole lot of hot weather. So the results of our trip, that'll be a story for another day, because believe me, there is a story. So, hey, we're back on Clear Lake. And let's see, this report, even though I'm going to post it the afternoon of the 26th, we're going to call it July 27, 2023. So, just because. Water temperature this morning and yesterday started out actually at the county park today, and it was 82 degrees this morning. As I got around the lake down through the midsection and down a little bit farther down to the west and south, I found some 78.5 to 79 degree water. So we'll call it that there's a 3 to 4 degree water temperature difference, and I'm sure somewhere you'll find warmer water, and if you're lucky you may find some cooler water. So there's your water temperature. Lake level dropped 1/3 of a foot this past week. It's at 4.8 last time I looked this morning. Man, watercolor, what can I tell you? I've seen everything. I've seen some pretty heavy algae bloom. I've seen some scattered algae bloom. I've seen some just water that we'll use the scientific term and say it just looks like caca. It's kind of a brownish color. Maybe 1.5 feet of clarity is the best that I've been able to see in the last 2 days. It's not awful by any stretch of the imagination, and there's far less algae bloom than I thought. Now, I'm sure if you get into certain areas, it's bad. One thing I noticed when I was down between Monitor and Konocti Bay, down in that area, it was pretty packed on the surface up against the shoreline, relatively open and clear during in the middle. And then when you got on the other side, you know, wherever the wind was blowing, it was kind of packed in. Not too nasty to fish in. It's just one of those algae blooms that by the time you were done fishing a spot, everything was green. So that pretty much covers the conditions. This weekend, you've got two, I really wish they'd quit doing this, but 2 BBT tournaments. And let me just stop and say, I'm not 100% sure. They've got a Saturday permit and a Sunday permit, so I don't know if they're doing 2 daily tournaments or if it's a night tournament. I just don't have that information. So with these water temperatures, boy, I'll tell you what, it's going to be tough to keep fish alive. So please, please, please do your best. And if you're out here fun fishing, just goofing off, avoid the temptation of slapping 5 fish in a live well just for the sake of a picture at the end of the day. These fish are way better off if you catch them and let them go. So there's your conditions. Those are the upcoming activities. Okay, I've only fished a day and a half. Actually, the equivalent of what would be a full day, I guess, because we fished. Jim and I were out yesterday and fished for about 3.5 hours, and today I fished for maybe 6, so we'll call it 9 hours or so. We caught 2 fish yesterday, a catfish and a bass. Today I caught 8 bass. Didn't catch any catfish, which I'm frankly kind of disappointed about. I actually kind of enjoy them on this bass tackle. what I heard from Jim while I was gone, and what I saw from a couple of other people, is that the bite had actually improved for a better group of people. And by better, I mean there was a few people who were pretty consistently on schools of fish, and they were catching fish while everybody else was having a tough time. It's getting a little bit easier to find locations that have fish. I know I talked to a guy yesterday who had like 20 fish over one day, and then the fish started moving. And I really don't know how many he ended up with yesterday, but it was less fish than he had the day before. Same thing that Jim's experienced is the fish that he's been able to catch are moving more than likely as the bait moves around. These fish are moving with the bait. So I wish I could say that I have figured out some kind of pattern, because I haven't. What I'm finding is it's spots. If you're on a spot that has fish that are feeding, you can catch fish. You can catch them on reaction baits. You can catch them on plastics. If you're on a spot where fish aren't feeding, you're not going to catch fish. I know that sounds like an oversimplification, but it's just what I've heard from reliable sources and what I've learned just in the last 2 days. So it's interesting with water temperature being as warm as it is. I was in a stretch today that I probably saw close to a 200-yard stretch of bank that there were, and I have no idea what they are because I never hooked one. I don't know if they were small hitch blackfish. I have no idea what they were, but there was a ball of bait or an area of bait that was probably 20 yards wide and at least 100 yards long. And while that sounds like a huge amount of bait, and it is in one area, I fished a whole lot of other areas where I never saw a single fish, didn't see a single bird. So I'm sticking with my guns. There are areas where there's a pretty good concentration of bait. And I'll also tell you that where I saw that concentration of bait, I could not get bit. So what can I say? Usually you look for bait and you catch fish. So, you know what? That's going to be it. Hopefully we'll be back online here. I know I've got some guide trips lined up, and I opened some dates on the calendar for anybody else now that it seems like there's perhaps a little bit more consistent bite. So there you go. We'll see you next week.